The best way to make a memory is by going out and creating it. But it can take time, money, and a whole lot of planning, and it all has to start with a dream, a desire to go on an adventure of exploration of the unknown. That's why so many of us who are off-road vehicle enthusiasts are so passionate about building our 4x4 vehicles into the ultimate overland rig. This is why Keaton, our videographer for TrailBuilt, and I had just spent the last few months preparing for this ultimate overlanding trip into the Colorado Rocky Mountains, while also attending the Overland Expo in Loveland, Colorado. And after 3 days of baking out in the dusty lowlands of Loveland, Colorado for the Overland Expo is when our adventure really got started. Keaton and I headed up into the mountains towards Estes Park to find a remote camp spot with our forerunners. And did we end up finding the ultimate dispersed camping spot on top of a vista overlooking Estes Park. Not only were the views spectacular, but the trail leading in and out of our spot was full of fun and challenging obstacles. We had rock ledges, boulders, and steep inclines to overcome, and was about an hour-long trail to get to our spot. Once arriving, we took in the scenes for a moment before getting all set up for the night. And then once we were all set up, it was time to make a delicious meal, as we were just about dying from starvation at this point. Tonight's dinner is pan-fried chimichurri steak smothered with fried onions, bell peppers, sliced jalapenos, and butter-fried potato wedges on the side. It was a meal that not only tasted great, but tasted better than any meal we could have prepared at our home, just because of the content feeling we gained that evening from the adventure of the trail leading in. The food and the views of the mountains is the reason as to why we spent so much time, money, and effort building our 4x4s to do exactly what we just did that night. And it just doesn't end there. The next morning we had eggs and bacon while enjoying the views, then cleaned up, packed up to the point where no one would even know we were ever there, then traversed back down the mountain without even knowing at that point where we were going to end up for the night. But that's the adventure. So we decided we're going to hit the road and see where things take us. We did have a general direction we knew we wanted to go in, and that was towards the tallest mountain peaks we could find that had trails around them, and was somewhat in the direction of traveling north, as that was on our way home. This is where I wish Gaia Maps would have Onyx Off-Road's descriptions of what the trails actually were. Onyx does a great job with detailing what the trails are designated for and the ratings of the trails to determine if they are trails we can take or not. Whereas Gaia is great for mapping, tracking, and getting you to the trails, but you are really dependent on the person's public track and if they actually detailed what the track is. In Gaia, just because there is a route where you are looking to go doesn't necessarily mean it's designated for high clearance 4x4 vehicles. It could have just been a hiking trail that some rando saved as a public track but didn't specify the activity. That left us with having to use Onyx Off-Road to find our high clearance 4-wheel drive trails. Then we would switch over to Gaia mapping for the tracking plus the additional features that Gaia offers. But anyways, if you guys have a better way of finding off-road 4x4 tracks in Gaia, or even an all-in-one off-road vehicle-specific mapping app, definitely let us know in the comments below. Regardless, we were able to finally get off the pavement after a few hours of driving and ended up on a pretty sweet off-road trail that ended us almost to the top of Bald Mountain in the Rockies. The trail leading up to our camp spot was only about 10 miles or so, but took us almost 4 hours to get to the most scenic views yet. The trail was full of large boulders and steep inclines that led us through a massive section of burnt standing timbers from a fire that decimated the area back in 2020. It was a very surreal feeling driving through what was at one time an out-of-control raging blaze that doesn't care, and it didn't matter what was in its path. It was destroyed, yet left the tree standing as a reminder that nature will prevail and we must utilize it with the utmost respect. Once at our camp spot for the night, and after some thoughtful but quick considerations because the sun was going down, Keaton and I decided to load up with some hiking gear and cameras and climb the rest of the way to the peak of Bald Mountain by foot. Cautious of the local predators, we were diligent about keeping our heads on a swivel and prepared to punch holes through anything that would have propositioned us for our lives. And guys, no deals were being made that night. Once we conquered the 11,005-foot peak, the sun was just hitting the horizon, and again, another feeling of rewarding accomplishments overcame us as the views were so worth the sacrifices of everything it had taken us so far to get to this point. At that moment, nothing else mattered. This is why the term deemed overlanding is what it is. The adventure, the risks, the sacrifices, it was all to experience what God has given us, and that's the beauty of what can be found on our planet. It really is the destination that makes the journey so worth it. As we descended down the mountainside back to our camp spot, we both silently absorbed and reflected on what we had just experienced and what the true meaning of overlanding really is. A lot of you know exactly what we had experienced on our journey and can completely relate. But how many of you truly have committed yourselves to getting out and exploring new areas and setting off on an adventure where the only thing you truly know is that you're setting off into the unknown? Nothing could have completely prepared us for this particular experience, nor the experience of our entire trip. But it's that leap of faith that has now left us with an urge to travel more, do more, and live this life to its fullest while we can. The money spent building your vehicle with parts from TrailBuilt, that can be replaced, but time lost can never be found again. Once it's gone, it's gone. And that evening, after we got back to camp, it was a quick meal in a bag as we talked about our future plans before heading back to each of our forerunners for a good night's rest before the 4-hour trek out of the mountains and the additional 7 hours of back roads before we get to our final destination, Badlands, South Dakota. And I have to say this, guys, but it really is quite amazing to take these vehicles on a total of 2,500 miles. Some of them some pretty harsh and abusive miles, only to get back home again without a single failure or issue. And I was finally able to genuinely put the General Grabber X3 mud terrains and the Icon Rebound Pros through their paces on the trails at low air pressures without any kind of issues at all. The traction was always there, and I felt a whole heck of a lot more confident that I wasn't going to lose a bead running the Icons with the inner beadlock. That extra peace of mind makes it all worth it to run them, especially while literally out in the middle of nowhere. I was also really impressed with Keaton's new Falcon Wild Peaks that he had just installed 2 days prior before embarking on this adventure. Running around 34 pounds of pressure in his tires because of not having any bead retention, he was still able to almost follow me everywhere I went running 15 pounds of pressure. And I say almost because there were a few technical challenges that were quite difficult that Keaton, had he aired down, he probably would have made it just fine. But regardless, both vehicles got back home safely without a hitch. And keep in mind, guys, that if you are in the market for a new set of tires, maybe some new wheels to go with those tires, or maybe you're looking for a new suspension kit to improve your vehicle's off-road performance, or maybe it's just some overlanding accessories and gear that you're looking for in preparation for the next overlanding adventure. that you guys can find some of the best deals with our free mounting, balancing, and shipping program, and some of the most available inventory on the market right on our website at TrailBuilt Off-Road, or even easier by clicking the link in the description below.